Alright, so first I want to show off my new holster. I got this this Safariland Flex platform. I have never been a real big fan of the drop leg holsters, but this doesn't really behave like a drop leg. It's got the strap, but I like it. I like it a lot. I'll make a video specifically about it. I wore it for about a total of 36 hours straight over the weekend, working Black Spring Break, and it never got uncomfortable. It doesn't wobble, you know, it doesn't wobble back and forth like the traditional drop legs have in the past, and that's why I never wore them, because I just don't like that wobble, especially if you have to run. But anyway, I've gotten a couple of emails over the past couple months of guys asking about vehicles. You know, what vehicle do I recommend for doing this line of work, for bounty hunting and stuff? And you know, over the years, I've tried out and driven a lot of different vehicles, and I think all in all, you know, I've done the Crown Vics with, you know, decked out with the lights and all the gadgets and toys, and I found that that's too much. You know, a lot of people that first get into this business, that's kind of their go-to thing. Of course, these days it's the Dodge Chargers more than the Crown Vic, but people want to drive vehicles that look similar to the police, and I get it. They look cool, but you know, utility-wise, I don't think it's a good choice. They have, you know, lots of room and lots of places to put different gadgets and things, but in reality, I drove Crown Vics for the first, I don't know, probably 10 or 12 years of doing this job, and I never needed the lights for anything. I think on a handful of occasions, if I had to call law enforcement to come to where I was, I would use my lights to make it easier for them to find me, and then they wound up kind of scoffing at that, because like, the heck you using lights for, you know? So, you know, a lot of people justify having lights for that reason, and I guess if I were in a life or death situation, you know, I really wouldn't care how law enforcement felt about me having lights, as long as the lights I was using were, you know, legal color. You know, where I'm at, amber, clear, green, those are pretty safe colors. All my lights were clear, and then I got real involved in the fire department, and then they turned to red and clear, and I couldn't use them for anything other than the fire department at that point. So yeah, whatever. You know, people that do this line of work like the blinky lights. I love the blinky lights, don't get me wrong. I love having the blinky lights on my car. I'm not even gonna pretend like I don't, but realistically, I spent a lot of money over the years on lights that I would only use very occasionally, and they weren't even being used for anything that was that necessary. So be realistic about the equipment that you use in your vehicle. All right, so now I'm a little bit older, been doing this job a lot longer, and now I'm looking for more utilitarian use. What's going to be more comfortable? You know, what can I fit my team in comfortably? You know, what's going to get me decent gas mileage? A lot of times the comfort and the decent gas mileage don't really, you know, go hand in hand. But you also, if you can afford it, you also want to have one or two other vehicles. Just plain Jane, will fit into just about any neighborhood vehicle. Now, how you accomplish both the comfort and the will fit into just about any vehicle, any neighborhood vehicle, is you want a Tahoe, a Suburban, or Expedition. You know, though the SUVs are probably one of the most versatile vehicles for this job, because you have the truck chassis, You can go off-road in it if you need to. A lot of the places that we go to when we're looking for people are down long dirt roads with potholes and, you know, through mud and stuff like that. And while the Crown Vics and the Chargers will do that mostly, if you wind up going after somebody that lives off grid and their vehicle's a 4x4 jacked up truck, they might have some pretty deep ruts in their driveway, and they might actually have that on purpose. And your cars that sit low to the ground just aren't going to be able to handle that. So, you know, I think my all-time favorite vehicle for this job, well, I have two of them. My all-time favorite vehicles, I had a 4-wheel drive Expedition that I did this job in, and I had a F-250 Super Duty 4-wheel drive that I did this job in. And those two vehicles were really, really good for this work. Now I drive a big ass transport van, and I drive that van because I have 7 kids, so it's actually my family vehicle, but it works really, really well for this job, for the exception of those really bumpy off-road tracks. So if we come across a driveway that's long and, you know, has a lot of potholes, we gotta park and walk. You know, it's just not made for that kind of driving. But as far as room, it's a Ford, a Ford Transit 350, and we have a ton of room. It's a super comfortable ride. Another thing that the SUVs are good for, those long road trips. You know, they're just comfortable. You can put your team in them. Same with my van. You can put the team in it and still have plenty of room for gear, prisoners, whatever you need. So I tend to stay away from the sedans, you know, the 4-door cars. One, I'm 6'3". Those tend to get really uncomfortable for me really fast. I like to step up into a vehicle. Crown Vics, I have to kind of step down into them, and getting out of them, I'm like, ugh, ugh. It's, you know, I'm not a small guy, so it takes some work to get out of a Crown Vic or a Charger. So that's my take on it. And, you know, stay away from all the blinky lights if you can, and if you just must, if you just absolutely have to have them, make them all hideaway. You know, another good reason to stay away from the Crown Vics and the Chargers is if you're going into the projects or into rough neighborhoods, a lot of your drug dealers have lookouts way before you get to where you need to go, especially if you're heading to an apartment complex. There's an apartment complex here locally that I have to take a certain path into the complex, because if I go through the neighborhood, by the time I get to the complex, I have passed 4 separate lookout spots where they watch for Gulfport PD, because the other path into the complex is through Long Beach, and they don't put lookouts in Long Beach because it's in a different jurisdiction. So Long Beach cops don't come to that apartment complex very often for anything. So if I'm going to this place, I have to go around, come through Long Beach, and come into it so I can avoid the lookouts. And if you're driving a vehicle that looks like a cop car, and even if it's a regular truck or something, but you got lights and antennas and all that on it, then your chances of catching your guy are going to be diminished. Now, they might not know you're coming for that person, so that works in your benefit a lot of times, but they know somebody's coming, and everybody in the complex is watching. By the time you get from where the cops normally come in to the complex, every single apartment in that apartment complex has been warned, and they're watching out the windows. And if you're the agent that got the guy out of jail, as soon as you step out of that car, they know why you're there. So when it comes to vehicles, get something that blends in somewhere, something that's comfortable, something that you can carry your gear in if you have a lot of backup gear or excess gear. Like I do, I have a lot. I'm kind of redundant in that way. And you know, something that gets okay gas mileage. I don't really worry too much about the gas mileage because it's just part of the gig. But you know, comfort is probably the biggest thing in my opinion. I have to if I'm going to spend, you know, 8 to 12 hours in a vehicle, I want it to be real comfortable. And right now my van is probably the second most comfortable vehicle I've ever had. The first one would be the F-250. That truck was amazing. I miss my truck. Anyway, I hope this helps you guys that had questions about what kind of vehicle I would recommend. Oh, and if you can afford it, I started to touch on this a minute ago. Have a second vehicle that is absolutely nowhere close to the whole law enforcement look. You know, like for a long time I drove a Ford Freestyle. My Ford Freestyle was my other family vehicle, but it blended in anywhere I went. Nobody expects a bounty hunter to get out of a Ford Freestyle. Trust me when I tell you that. And they're like, oh my God, I can't believe you rolled up on me in that. And I would have never seen it coming. Anyway, I kind of like that car too. It was very comfortable. Anyway, that's all for now. Ben the Bondsman signing out. Remember, bail bonding isn't what we do, it's who we are.